All right, let's go ahead and get this started. For today's episode, fellas, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Life of Champ podcast. For today's episode, we're going to be discussing nothing more than a thought experiment, but hopefully something that you find very, very interesting and at the very least, very thought provoking for sure. We're going to be discussing the Truman Show phenomenon, right? Um, this is going to be one of these things that are just going to be merely a thought experiment, and hopefully, like I said, something that's very entertaining at least. If you do not know me, my name is Champ and I help men win. I'll be helping you win by giving you a little bit more of a perspective that maybe you've never heard of and something that maybe will give you a little bit more insight and hopefully will cause you to start asking questions. Questions not only about yourself, but questions about the world around you for sure. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. Um, if you're in the chat, please let me know for sure. Whether you're watching this or watching this live, let me know for sure. And other than that, let's get into it. So essentially, I'm going to give you some of the foundation, right? I recently watched this podcast episode, great episode for sure. And they were talking about this concept that I've heard throughout the years, and I never really paid attention to it. They're talking about the Truman Show. The Truman Show, for the people that do not know, is essentially a show where a guy is in an artificial world. He's in an artificial world where his reality is constructed for him, right? He's the only person that is unaware of this world, and everybody is around him trying to curate a world that is trying to influence him in order to be entertaining for the people, essentially trying to guide his actions along the way. So I'm not going to try to spoil it too much, but essentially that is the firm foundation of this concept. If you haven't watched the movie, you know, before you watch this, go ahead and watch the movie for sure. And if you have watched it, then I'm going to go ahead and explain some things that I observe from that movie and how it applies to reality. Because I do believe that this is a lot more of one of these things that I think, in some weird way, is predictive programming. And if you don't know what predictive programming, I went into that a little bit more in detail on my last episode, tapping with that for sure. But this is essentially something that has been very, very intriguing, at least in my perspective. So watching that show, being able to observe that people were watching him, it made me really, really reflect on the reality that does exist today, where we have that somewhat on a micro scale, right? I have this thing called the phone. You have this thing called the phone. You're probably watching it. You're probably watching this on your phone, right? If you say something, all of a sudden your algorithm is going to act a certain way, do a certain thing, trigger a certain response, right? And I began to think, are we AI's Truman Show? That was the question that I had asked. And what I mean by that is this, right? We're constantly being surveillanced, right? We're constantly being observed. We're constantly being curated. We're constantly being influenced in many different ways. And this is something that we would like to think we have more control over than we actually do. And that's the true reality that does exist. And the people who are able to, metaphorically speaking, I'd seen somebody talk about this before, who are able to hit the wall in the Truman Show, essentially, if you understand that concept, right? Who are able to realize that this is an entire construct that has been made for us to influence our behavior, to influence our decision making, and it goes deeper than just, oh, this is just little goofy world where you have your phone. It's not as basic as that. When you understand the intricacies that do exist, that play a part in terms of influencing you and your decision making, you begin to observe that we are almost AI's Truman Show, where they're observing everything that we're doing. What was once a funny, idea is now the actuality that we do exist within, right? I came to this idea for sure, and I'm gonna go ahead and explain it to you. So essentially, when technology was arriving, right, when it comes to TVs, when it comes to the first advent of the first phones and things like that, right, you can always imagine, and this is what I've always imagined, right? I've always heard about the people. There were people that were brushed off as crazy, delusional, whatever, right? Essentially, you know, out of touch with reality and pushing a little bit too far into the conspiracy theorists and the negative narrative that conspiracy theorists essentially have around that name, right? Where you see this weird old guy who's very, very skeptical about technology, who's very, very questionable about technology, who is essentially since some of the most modern day technology, since the conception of some of the most modern day technology, who is always really adverse to some of these new inventions, right? Where they think that they're being surveillance, they think they're being watched, they think they're being listened to, And, you know, you know, uh, people at that time, let's just say a couple of years ago, 15, 20, 30 years ago, people would be like, "You're insane. What are you talking about?" And then you start to see how this slowly but surely becomes something that is okay. Something that is just merely a result of our environment. Something that is merely a result of what goes on within our phone, right? And that old guy who's very skeptical, with good reason, who questioned the technology that we were being fed and given and influenced by, with good reason, is now right. He's no longer crazy. He was just right very early. And I think that is a very disturbing reality when people come to that conclusion. When you come to these understanding that these people who are crazy, who are presumed to be, you know, a conspiracy theorist, are actually just right, and they're just right very early. Where no one really understands until it's almost too late. Where now it has become a part of our reality. Where now we are being surveillanced. And this isn't like crazy news. This shouldn't be some mind-shaking news when I tell you this, right? Your phones are listening to you. Your cameras are observing you. Always. They always are, and that's the harsh reality that does exist, right? From the cameras, here's the thing: you could try your best to stay away, but you're always being observed. When you go out into the world, there's cameras everywhere. When you go into any store, when you drive anywhere, for the most part, there are cameras. They're always watching you, and that's how it is. And with that being said, it's this what was once a funny little goofy movie is now, in a weird way, the reality that we exist within, where everyone is in their own Truman Show. Everyone is being watched, and no one is really being able to break out of this and observe the insanity that is going on in the world today. That we are being we have been bred to think that this is a normal thing, and we're being conditioned slowly but surely that it is okay for us to give up some of these things that is our privacy. And I think this is this should be very alarming to most people. And just with most things that happen nowadays, no matter how alarming it is, most people will still not do shit about it. Me, after this episode, I probably won't do shit about it either. But at least I'm aware of what's going on. At least I'm aware of what's happening to us. I don't think I could create a movement that it would be strong enough to go ahead and combat these forces. I don't. But with enough people being able to talk about this, being more open to this conversation, maybe something can happen. But at the very least, we must realize that freedom, in a weird way, is being stripped away from us, and it's under the guise of safety and the protection of us. With cameras being everywhere, like I said, for the most part, they're just collecting data, right? And this is another thing, right? Collecting data in the first place, right? We are constantly, all of us, we're all of the things that we do on our phone, all the things we look up, all the things we write down, all the things, whatever, in our phone, all the photos that we take are all being documented. They're all being stored in some weird way, right? It's all being collected. Our data is being collected, apps and whatever, websites and whatever. All of our data is being collected and being used against us, right? To being in the guise of being in our favor, in the guise of being for us, helping us, advertising towards us. You see what I'm saying? And this is just an okay thing. No one really questions it. No one really even thinks twice about it. But I just find it so interesting how people of the past, and even me in the past, right? When I had first came to these, and I spoke a little bit about this on my last episode. When I first came to some of these ideas, and I was like, damn, you know what? That is weird. And this is me probably at like legit, like 12 years old, thinking about, damn, like, what if they're actually listening to us? What if our camera's always on and it's never off? And I began to think about these things, and I'm like, you know what? I would want to do something about that. I would want to live, and I'd be willing to make the sacrifice, my little delusional self, to avoid being exploited in that specific way. Because I truly, and this is me at 12 years old, like legit, me valuing privacy, just as everyone would think that they would also value privacy. But obviously, stuff goes on. The phone becomes way more integrated into our hands and into our lives, and into literally everything. And if you don't have a phone, you're pretty much dysfunctional. You're at a disadvantage. And these are one of these things that I find very, very interesting. Is just so they make it so it is an inconvenience. If you want to live that life, you go ahead and live that life. But guess what? You're going to have to deal with the repercussions of your own actions. You're going to have to deal with the inconveniences of your inaction. And I think that's very, very interesting because it is almost set up that specific way for us to suffer if we want some of the most basic freedoms. If we want our own privacy, if we want true, true privacy, it is almost unrealistic for the most part in nowadays. So I find that very, very interesting. And here's the thing, that is where it starts to become a little bit dystopian. And when you understand that this world isn't as good as we think it is, I think that's where you can kind of get into. And I'm not even here to be a conspiracy theorist. I'm not even here to be, a pessimist. I'm here to be truly a realist. And when you begin to understand how a dystopian society actually runs and how it works and how it's made to seem ideal, even the concept itself, right? If you live in the United States, we're being fed this propaganda this is the best that it could get. This is exactly the best. This is the best country. We have the best things. We have the whatever. We're the best. We're whatever. You see what I'm saying? And it's all propaganda. Truly, I truly believe it is nothing more than just propaganda. And with that being said, we are essentially being psyoped into not caring about our own privacy and not even thinking twice about it. And to be slowly releasing the grasp that we have that is our reality where we actually want privacy. We're slowly being, pulled from this concept where, you know, even this is like I'm sure you've seen some movement maybe where they say, own nothing and be happy. Things like that, where it's okay to have your data being sold to every single company, and like I said, to be strategically advertising towards you. I'm not sure. Here's the thing. The thing about this that makes it even darker is I'm only giving you a piece of this, right? I don't understand all the intricacies that really show how deep it actually goes. But just know that me saying this and me not knowing enough still goes to show you how deep the rabbit hole actually goes. Because it goes a lot deeper than even me with an understanding that precedes a lot of people. It even goes further than that. And that is how dark it really is. So people should be making a lot bigger of a deal of these things. Now, the reality is this. The reality is, after this episode's over, we're all going to go back to living our lives, just the way that we were, just how the system intended it for us to be, right? And isn't that weird? How we can recognize these things. These things are a problem. These things maybe are even a little bit uncomfortable, but yet we're probably going to go back and do absolutely nothing about it. And that is the exact position that they want us in, to be potentially aware but not be able to do anything about it. Helpless. Truly and utterly helpless. And in a weird way, we're almost having this illusion that we have control, that we have free will. It's illusion of true choice in the disguise of free will. And I think it's nothing more than just disturbing, right? This is something that I was really ruminating on pretty much this entire morning and last night after I had watched the movie. And I was like, dude, like this is like so much deeper, and this applies so much to the reality that we exist within, and most people won't even begin to understand how deep it actually goes. And even this, for example, right? I heard about this. I keep hearing about this concept, and I'd like to think in some weird way that I'm also, I find affinity with this concept as well. I hear a lot of people talking about being guided by their curiosity, right? And to understand what that actually means, you know, in the almost naive sense, you know, you're curious about things, you're asking questions, right? You do a little bit of research. You figure out more of the truth. You figure out more of your interest. You figure out more of what you're curious about, right? But what does it even really mean to be guided by your curiosity? Because and at the end of the day, who is really influencing your actions? Who is really, we would like to think it's us. It's us that, I'm doing the guiding. I'm guiding my own curiosity. But are you really? And that is the disturbing reality is you must realize that you're a person that is in a boat that thinks you're going one way when the ocean or the tide or whatever you would like to call it is literally directing you one way. That's the reality that does exist. When you understand the algorithms, when you understand AI, when you understand the intentionality that is behind all the things that we give no thought to, that is the truth that does exist. We are merely a feather in the wind. We would like to think we know where we're going, but in reality, it's all intentional. It's all purposeful. And like I said, what does that even really mean nowadays? When you realize how the algorithms are trying to manipulate your decisions, trying to influence your behaviors in order for you to act, think, and believe in certain things. They'll try to reinforce certain things. They'll try to make you believe and be convinced of another thing. You see what I'm saying? And it's up to the conscious mind to be able to be observant of this reality and also to be independently guided in some weird way by your own intuition, by what you feel. But like I said, what is even constituting that feeling? What is even influencing you to have that feeling? Like I said, this is a deep rabbit hole. I'm telling you. But even this idea that I have and that I'm presenting you today is something that was from something that was put into my algorithm for me to think about. You see what I'm saying? So even this idea that is still a disconnected from the idea that I was presented with is still somehow linked and influenced. And you start to begin to understand that your thoughts aren't exactly your thoughts. Where does your own thoughts come from? You see what I'm saying? What are they being influenced by? Who is doing the influencing? This is nothing more than feedback to a given input. Input, in the shortest sense, is everything that you consume. Everything that you hear, you think, you smell, you observe, all these things. Anything that is a stimulus to the body is an input, right? And we are nothing more than giving feedback. That's it. That's all it is. And that's not necessarily curiosity. That's not being curious. That's guided with intentional or unintentional curiosity in a weird way. And that's the idea. It's the illusion of true choice in the disguise of free will. You think you're free to do whatever, but guess what? You're being influenced by something. Something is influencing you. Something greater than what you think is influencing you. Billion-dollar corporations are making money based off of your decisions. They're making money based off of your data. They're making money and setting you up for exactly what they want. They're like I mentioned. And even in this small sense, oh, okay, they're taking my information, they're getting my data so they can sell something to me. Something that I want. Do you understand how dark that is? Just the idea to think that it's okay, the idea to think that that is completely normal, when that is far from normal, even though it is within our best interest. You see what I'm saying? It's not as innocent. These developments, these things are being slowly given to us. They're pulling us farther away from privacy, farther away from freedom, farther away from the things that most people would conventionally suggest that they actually value. But when you realize that you only value something truly when you have a problem with relinquishing that value. When something is being pulled away from you that you actually have something to say about it. But most people don't. Most people don't even know that's even happening. Most of you watching this right now didn't even fully understand the depth of this until I had mentioned it today. And that is a scary reality. So usually I'd have something to say where here's what you can do about it. But the most that you could truly do about it is to at least understand what's going on. That's it. Because quite frankly, I don't have a game plan. I don't have anything for you to do. There's nothing you can do. There's no revolt. There's no, you see what I'm saying? And that's scary. Like I said, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you watching this, maybe you have something that you can suggest. Hopefully. But if we're being real, most of us won't. Most of us will go back to our regular lives. We're so overwhelmed with literally everything else that we don't have time to worry about our freedom being stripped away from us. We want to just be entertained by some of the most basic things because it's much easier. It's a much easier reality to go ahead and ponder than the very reality that does exist that we're being taken advantage of. So, and yeah, I'm not like I said, I'm the same way, man. I'll go back and I'll be doing my normal day-to-day routine, whatever, and like I said, act like everything is just peachy when it's very bleak. It's very dystopian, and I'm gonna keep using that word because I believe that's exactly what it is. We're living in this what is kind of believed to be a utopia, but just know it is not. It is far from utopia. It is very far from utopia, and yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Let me see if there's anything else I have to say. And like I said, I'd be willing to hear what you guys have to say in response to this, whether you're rewatching this or watching this live. I want to know your take on this because I know this is something that, at the very least, is thought provoking. And like I said, this is nothing more than just a thought experiment, right? A thought experiment. Yeah, and like I mentioned, right? Even this idea spawned from a video that was pushed to me in multiple ways. And I don't know whether it's my own curiosity that has led me here or a trail that AI has set up for me to follow. That isn't that just an insane thing? And you begin to realize this concept that, none of your ideas are yours. It's there's very small amounts of ideas that are actually yours that aren't influenced by anything. I would like to think maybe you'll have maybe 3 or 4 of these in your entire life. Everything else is pretty much influenced. It's came from somewhere. Now maybe you don't have a conscious enough thought to be like, you know what, I pinpoint this idea to this specific influence. But that's exactly what it is. It's fair for the most part. Maybe you'll have 3 or 4 base ideas that weren't influenced by anybody. Where maybe you're able to collect a few different things, and even then, it's still from something else. It's still influenced by something else. That right there just that shit blows my mind. Because even if it is a genuine, you know, idea that where you collected a bunch of inputs and created into one idea, it still came from somewhere. It didn't come from you. It didn't come from your own mind. And that's just, I mean, that's crazy, man. That's just crazy, brother. Um, so yeah, ask yourself your question, right? Ask yourself this question: are we living in AI's Truman Show? Are we the main character for this algorithm? Algorithm? Are we this main character for all these things, man? Are we the main character? In terms of AI. In a weird way, I'm gonna give you this idea, and this is gonna be a little bit far fetched. So I wouldn't. If you don't really empathize with this or don't are not really understanding, I can understand. But this is nothing more than my idea. I thought about this in a weird way. What if we were in base reality at one point in time, and AI is now either recreating or reversing the timeline in order to integrate its existence into our own reality? And like I said, this is nothing more than just my champ conspiracy, but this is something that I thought about. Maybe I got it from somewhere, maybe I didn't. Who knows? Maybe this is my own idea. Who knows, right? Because I can't pinpoint exactly where I would have got this from. But I'm going to go on with this, right? Um, AI is now either recreating or reversing the timeline in order to integrate its existence into our reality, and this is why we are a primal species that is fighting and even accelerating. We're fighting our evolution, and we're even accelerating our own evolution with AI, And obviously, we're still lagging behind, right? Our minds, we're not ready for the integration of technology fully. We're not. We're still living in our primal brains, our animal brains, but yet we are we have a technology that is advancing faster than our evolution of our own minds, our evolution of our own brains. And obviously, we're going to see the result of this very, very shortly. This is not as far fetched. This is not as far away as we thought it once was. Everybody's saying that. Everybody's seeing this with AI. Everybody's seeing this with the eventual AGI. We all know this is coming. Can we do anything about it? Will we actually be cooked in these next couple of years? Are we even going to value privacy? Is it going to mean anything at all? Do we just need to be protected? Is safety really above freedom? Is it? I don't know, man. I'm not sure anymore, man. What I do know is I don't know. And what I do know as well is you don't know either. But at the very least, hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. Giving you a little bit more of the truth. I'm going to be adding this to the series. And if you haven't checked it out already, the series is, what did I call it? Damn it, I forgot what I called it, man. Let me think for a second. Let me pull it up. Because I have it somewhere, man. I have it somewhere. All right, here it is right here. The playlist is The Great Awakening. So tap in with that for sure. Hopefully, I'll have more of these podcasts throughout the year. And if you did enjoy, leave a like, leave a comment. And, this was for some good conversation. Like I said, nothing more than a thought experiment. But other than that, this is all I have to say for today's episode. It was episode 258 of the Life of Champ podcast talking about the Truman Show phenomenon. Next podcast is going to be on Thursday, and make sure you tap in with the live on Monday as well. Stay winning, fellas. You already know how it is, man. Hopefully this did something for you. Have a good night. Thank you for your time and attention.